Today, we will be covering the Civil War era of the history of Dyer, Tennessee. There are many famous battlegrounds in the state, such as Shiloh. One of the famous raids of the state happened with Nathan Bedford Forrest. Now, we understand that he is a very controversial character in history and that we are only going to discuss this part that he had to play with the town of Dyer itself. This in no way is to be political, only to reflect the feelings and events surrounding the people of the time and how it had been retold. As we have previously discussed, a small town of Dyer Station had just been born from the inherited land of Benjamin Franklin Bobbitt. The town had several churches, 3 mercantile stores, a post office, and a boxcar used as a train station. Things were growing and looking up for the tiny area. Tragically, on April the 12th, 1861, the winds of the Civil War had started blowing. As the gauntlet had been thrown down, with the first shots hurled at Fort Sumter. What seemed like a world away from the small town of Dyer would very soon land at its very doorstep. How would this tiny town survive the war? Come along with us as once again we travel back in time to find out the history of the small town in Tennessee named Dyer. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seat belts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up the time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces YouTube that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. The decision for succession. According to the book, A History of Dyer, Tennessee Community, Governor Isham G. Harris strongly favored a union with the Confederate States, even though there was a very strong feeling to stay with the northern states. The Tennessee State Legislature on May 6, 1861, proposed a Declaration of Independence for the separation of the state of Tennessee from the United States. On June 10, 1861, the proposal passed with a supported vote of 3-1. Each of the county courts were strongly urged to form a home guard of Minutemen. In its June session, the Gibson County Court appointed 10 men from each of its 22 civil districts of the county to be as members of the Home Guard without pay. The men who were appointed were A. L. Dunlap, J. S. Berry, L. Cummings, A. H. Taylor, Frank Turner, S. C. Crenshaw, W. H. McCaslin, John Eldridge, P. B. Allen, and B. F. Bobbitt. Additionally, the county court established a tax of 10 cents on each poll and 5 cents on each $100 worth of property. This money was to be used to aid the needy families of the volunteers. The home guard was to be armed with weapons given to them by the justices. Tennessee was admitted into the Confederate States of America on June 21, 1861. The voters ratified the Constitution of the Confederacy on August 1, 1861. On that same date, Thomas V. Wright was elected to serve in the Confederate House of Representatives in Richmond, Virginia, for the 10th Congressional District, which included Gibson County. Wright would be elected to office and would serve 2 terms. Recruitment of Men. According to the book A History of Dyer, Tennessee Community, 6 companies of the 12th Regiment of Tennessee Infantry were formed in Dyer Station in 1861. The men who were selected as leaders were Captain J. N. Wyatt, J. T. Mathis as First Lieutenant, Robert Atkinson as Second Lieutenant, James Armstrong as Third Lieutenant. This regiment of men were consolidated with the 22nd Regiment at Tupelo, Mississippi in 1863. Only 1 Federal regiment of men were raised in Gibson County. Company E of the 7th Tennessee Infantry was recruited in the North Gibson area in August of 1862. In the spring of 1863, this company became Company M of the 6th Tennessee Cavalry. Confederate Brigadier General Nathan Bedford Forrest in 1863 came to Gibson County and again recruited men from Dyer Station to form the Company C. The men who were officers in this second regiment were Captain J. T. Mathis, First Lieutenant J. P. Armstrong, Second Lieutenant J. C. A. Greer, and Third Lieutenant Pink Bradbury, and Orderly Sergeant Robert A. Overall. This company would consolidate with Shaw's company, also from Dyer. Even though the total men from the state of Tennessee would be 100,000 men for the Confederacy and 50,000 men for the Union, conscriptions were put in place periodically to fill the gaps. There are stories of men escaping capture and dressing as women to plow their corn in their fields to avoid being pressed into service. Tennessee captured. By late 1862, the majority of the state of Tennessee was occupied by Union forces. Tennessee needed to increase its representation in the U.S. government. So, elections were held in the 9th and 10th districts on December 29, 1862. Alvin Hawkins was nominated and won the election. However, he was denied a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. General Forrest raids through the 10th district, which included Dyer Station, caused great political upheaval concerning this seat. No one would claim the seat at the U.S. House of Representatives because of it. Company K, 119th Illinois Infantry. The Company K was part of the 119th Illinois Infantry Regiment. They were a volunteer infantry for the Union Army. The 119th was formed at the beginning of September 1862 and mustered into service on October 7, 1862, under the command of Colonel Thomas Jefferson Kenly. This would be a 3-year-long service for the men. Kenny would be promoted to Brevet Brigadier General on May 26, 1865. Several detachments were sent immediately to Jackson, Tennessee, following the Mobile and Ohio Railroad north until December 1862. On the way north from Jackson, sometime between October and December of 1862, the town of Dyer Station was captured by Company K, and the town of Rutherford Station, just 3 miles away, was captured by Company G. These two companies would stay in their captured towns until the raids by Forrest and his men began. Company K had 68 men in their group, which included officers and enlisted men. It has been reported by the sources that the Union Company was not kind to the residents of the area. However, no one was harmed or killed while they were there in the small town. It has also been said that they plundered or completely destroyed homes and businesses to get what they wanted, and did a lot of petty crimes in the area. Company K built a fort in Dyer Station to house the soldiers. The stockade was placed along the railroad in an area named Maple, College, Front, and Main Street. However, this would not last long, as General Nathan Bedford Forrest would soon capture Companies G and K and chase the remaining men into Union City. The 119th K and G companies were captured on December 21, 1862. The regiment would finally be mustered out of service on August the 26th, 1865. This would be several months after the end of the Civil War, which officially ended on April 9, 1865. Confederate Brigadier General Nathan Bedford Forrest. From December 1862 to January 1863, Confederate Brigadier General Nathan Bedford Forrest led approximately 1,800 to 2,500 men into the West Tennessee area. A series of raids was conducted during the Civil War in the Union-occupied areas of West Tennessee. Most of these areas went along the Mobile and Ohio Railroad. The Union soldiers were there to make sure that Major General Ulysses S. Grant still had a supply line to him, as his war campaign was running along the Mississippi River towards Vicksburg. The Confederate soldiers were there to disrupt or dismantle the Mobile and Ohio Railway to thwart Grant's advance in the war. Through his many raids, Forrest was largely successful in his efforts, as each raid gave him more men and supplies. After the Battle of Trenton, Tennessee, on December 20th, 1862, Forrest would rest his men for the night and continue his march northward. The next morning at Dyer, Tennessee, Forrest captured a garrison of 30 men along with their supplies. He burned all the bridges and destroyed the rails in the area. He then moved onward to Rutherford, Tennessee, where he accomplished the same task. He was able to chase the Union soldiers to Kenton Station, Tennessee, where the soldiers would take shelter in their fortification. They would later be chased out of their fortification into Union City, Tennessee. Shortly after the raiders would leave the area, the Union soldiers would come back. The Southern sympathizers of the area were subject to military law. In March of 1864, Forrest would again raid the West Tennessee area. Once again, he quickly ran through Gibson County, taking Trenton and the area north on the M&O Railway. While there is a lot of information about the raids of Forrest out there, we only wanted to cover the section where Dyer Station, Tennessee played a part in the Civil War. We do plan on covering Forrest and his raiders at a later date, as they are historically interesting. This little area of Tennessee fought its Civil War battle, and the war had moved on to other areas in the South. Jimmie Joe, or Johnnie Joe Johnson. This story is found in the book A History of Dyer, Tennessee Community, concerning the execution of Jimmie Joe, or Johnnie Joe Johnson, as relayed by Wade Baird, who heard the story from his grandmother. According to the story, there was a young man from Crockett County that wandered all over West Tennessee pilfering and stealing. It is unknown how he kept from being drafted into the Army. He was captured by the Home Guards, Captain George King, Jim Shaw, John Thomas, and 2 other men. They stopped at the home of William Shaw Cruz. They told the family to fix the men some supper, that they would be right back in a few minutes after they had executed Johnson. Mr. Cruz was a Baptist preacher, and asked the men to wait until the morning to kill him, so that he could pray all night and prepare to die. This was refused, as they thought that Johnson might plot to escape, and the men didn't want to stay up all night long guarding him. So they took Johnson out to the woods and shot him 18 times before he died. He was buried the next day in a simple grave. There was a wooden plank used to mark the grave that would be replaced each time it rotted. Time and memory has been lost, as no one knows where the grave is located today. End of the war. Union forces, carpetbaggers, and scallywags made their way into West Tennessee area after the war was ending. However, Tennessee was the first state to meet the requirements for readmittance into the Union and for help with the Reconstruction. The wounds of brother fighting against brother would not heal for many years and even generations in some cases. In our next week's post, we will begin the period of Reconstruction. The railroads were a mess in many places and new track had to be laid. There are many homes and businesses that will have to be rebuilt because of the destruction. And many men will make their way home to their families and will never be the same again. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the history of Dyer, Tennessee. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notifications. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries of Tennessee history.